I mean, when you go from step to step and block to block, you finally wind up on a barricade. And how many people sincerely believe today that the barricade is more than a symbol? As I look upon 1930s, and when I think of the uprising of the Austrian workers in 1934, who at least could bring rifle against rifle, machine gun against machine gun, and saw how they were smashed, or when I think of the Spanish Revolution for 3 years, then I ask myself how today, in an era of nerve gas, in an era of supersonic aircraft, in an era of green beret, brainless whatever, in an era right now of who knows what type of weaponry, can one today seriously talk of an insurrection except as a symbol? And what can the barricade be than other a symbol? Let's face it now. If Frederick Engels in 1880 could make the declaration that the barricade was finished because of artillery, what can I say in the face of the neutron bomb? What can I say in the face of space warfare? So how is the extra-parliamentary movement, which is the feeding ground, the nourishing ground, the soil of a culture, be translated into a politics that will not at the same time be parliamentary, that will not be statecraft, but that will also, as it were, nourish the extra-parliamentary movement? And here I come up against some very valuable American, quotes, libertarian traditions. Americans believe that they do not like a centralized state. They at least believe it, whether they do or they do not like a centralized state. That is our national mythology. The state is at best a necessary evil, at worst it's an absolute sin. So that's the first thing. They believe that. And let me tell you, there can be mythologies that are stronger than realities. The Americans also believe, as a national mythology, whether real or not, that they believe in a decentralized society. That is built in to the American dream, that other dream, that this is the New Jerusalem, not only the place where the streets are paved of gold. There are two American dreams. One is that this is the new world, admittedly one stolen from the Indians and built on the backs of slaves and women, but still it is the new world. The land where you can innovate, the land where you can have freedom, the land where you can have liberty. And they therefore believe not only that the state is at best a necessary evil and at worst an absolute sin, they also believe in a decentralized society. In Vermont, one of our state legislatures happened to use a legal term. He said the communities and towns of Vermont are creatures of the state. He was the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee in the state of Vermont. That caused such an uproar, even though it's legally correct, that he had to resign his position and he was not reelected at the next election. It hung around him like an albatross. So Americans believe that their locality is the basic social unit of their politics. They believe that their society is a decentralized society. That's what they mean by federalism. Unfortunately, it also means a lot of power is given to the corporations and to the private proprietors. Nobody denies that. They believe in the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that people have a right to pursue happiness, not only own property. That is also part of their national mythology, or our national mythology. The revolution was not fought simply to establish the Boston bourgeoisie and put it into power. That was not why Dan Shays fought and then later went into revolt against Boston in 1787. That's not why the Articles of Confederation were written. That is not why the Bill of Rights was conceded, because of the enormous popular pressure to make the Constitution acceptable during the time when it was finally voted into existence. So there is a libertarian dimension in our revolution and in our tradition. Why do we let the right take it over? Why do we permit Reagan to become the spokesperson of it? And let's be frank, the spokesman of it, because that's macho if you ever saw it. Why do we permit libertarian parties, if you like, authoritarian groups, the Posse Comitatus, the Ku Klux Klan, all of these groups to take over this rich libertarian tradition that farmers with muskets in hand, small people in different walks of life, fought for, and that they forced a Hamilton to concede to. They forced a Samuel, a John Adams to concede to. Why do we let them take it over? And why do we go on again, in many cases, repeating again the old slogans of Soviets, of social democratic parties or socialist parties or whatever you like? Why do we let them take it over? Why don't we do what the Spanish anarchists did in Spain and what the Russian Narodniki did in Russia? They said that the Spanish Pueblo, Catholic, patriarchal, feudal, had a libertarian dimension to it. It had mutualism. It had a shared commonality. It believed very much in the rights of the individual. It was a dissident movement that the monarchy could all but control, and hardly did control. And there were also regions in Spain, Catalonia, Basque, and so on and so forth. And as we have them here in the United States. The Spaniards wanted a confederation, not a national state, and the Americans wanted a confederation. They had that national state slip in on them. And in many respects, they've been thinking confederally, and we've permitted reaction to take that over. Can we build a program of the future, radical, that speaks in English, not in German, not in Russian, not in Chinese, with all due respect to these movements, and that speaks to them on the level that is most intimate in their lives, their neighborhoods, which are in a state of dissolution, their communities, which are in a state of dissolution today, their blocks, be it on the city level, or their towns, be it on a somewhat agrarian level. Can we not build out of that a movement? And that involves literally recreating again popular forms of organization that are acceptable to the American mind. The town meeting, at least in New England, various kinds of neighborhood groups in other parts of the country, and possibly even the town meeting may again sweep not over 13 colonies, but over 50 states. I don't know. Why can't we recreate out of that a movement? Call it green, call it bioregional, but at least a movement that will invent a real libertarian politics, one that is not statecraft on the one side, that is not trying to take over, and thank God we can't anyway, the Congress, and that will be busy corrupting itself trying to do so and never even succeeding. And on the other side, try to create in its other form a politics in the Hellenic sense that brings people together in a new form of community-type organization. These forms of freedom lie at our disposal out of our traditions. Americans cannot translate town meetings into Soviets. That's foreign to them. They cannot translate municipal organizations confederally organized into what? Bolshevik parties or whatever you like. They can't make that translation. Why don't we speak to them in their language and find the libertarian content of their ideals? That is the cardinal problem of empowerment. And all the more so on the municipal level, not on the state level or national level, because the municipality is the grassroots we're always talking about anyway. Where is that grassroots if not in the municipality, if not in the neighborhoods, if not in our immediate communities? Where is the basis for confederating these grassroots and municipalities, if not in our bioregions, in our counties, use whatever term you like? And why can't we do as the sans-culottes did in 1793, but in English, not in French, say we want the confederation of municipalities that will confront and act as a countervening force to the growing nation state, the growing centralized corporations, the growing economic enterprises, multinationals, and the growing military system, ever more centralized and ever more united, that threatens literally to finally expropriate us of that very dream and of the very spirit of rebellion upon which all our hopes must ultimately last and ultimately depend. Herein I submit to you as a new municipal agenda, a libertarian municipalism that is translatable into English, that is translatable into the American the better aspect of the American dream that can also fuse and even recreate an extra-parliamentary movement. In other words, oddly enough, our extra-parliamentary movement in a sense has been there all the time and we have never used it. That's what I'm saying. And if I use the word politics, I do not mean statecraft. I use it in the Greek sense of the politia, of the polis, namely of the so-called city-state, a terrible translation, which in no way applies to what I'm talking about. The assembly of the people. This, I submit to you, forms a conceivable framework, ecological in character, countercultural in character, feminist in its perspective, ethnic in its perspective, rich in the traditions of American ideals, translatable into a language that Americans can understand, that might form the basis for a new kind of, if you like, libertarian municipalism, a new kind of politics which will free us, or at least arrest the development of the centralized state and corporations, and try to reach the people on that one level of existence which is most intimate to them, and that is the level of their community. That is what I would submit might be an agenda, not only for 1985, but for the rest of the century. Thank you.